This exercise may seem utterly useless for this session because you already know how to say these things in German, but it is not. Why it is not, we will realize just in a few minutes. But before we do that, let us see if we can write these 7 sentences in German. So let's say if you want to say, I am 28 years old. How will you say that? So you know, am, you have to use the verb sein, and sein for ich is bin. Then 28, you can just write it as it is, but actually in German you will have to say 28 Jahre alt. Then if you want to say I was 27 years old, so instead of using bin, you will have to say war, and it's no more sein, it is waren, and you have to learn the conjugation of waren for ich, which is war. So ich war 27 Jahre alt. And if you want to say I am a web developer, again, so you can just use I am, ich bin. Then you will have to say web developer, so web Entwickler. And web Entwickler is masculine, so it will be ein. Even if it was neutrum, it would have been ein. If it was feminine, it would have been eine. Okay. Then if you want to say I was a programmer, so you can use ich war ein Programmer. Not programmer, but Programmierer. If feminine, so it will be Programmierin, right? Because in German, every profession can be masculine, can be feminine. Then what about I have a solution and I had a problem? How do you say have? So you will have to use haben. Conjugated for ich will just be habe and not haben. Solution is Lösung. And anything which ends with ung, you can almost always guess it to be feminine. That will be ich habe eine Lösung. And then I had a problem, so you will have to use hatten. And hatten for I, that is ich, is hatte. Then you have problem. I had a problem. So problem in German, in English you say problem, in German you say Problem. Because German is a phonetic language, you pronounce the words as it is. For example, you have P, that is P, R, pro, pr, then O, pro, then B, prob, probl, proble, problem, problem. This is why you never have to guess the pronunciation of any German word if you just know how to pronounce all the alphabets, German alphabets. So ich hatte Problem is what, guys? If you can guess, I think it is neutrum, so it will be no ein Problem. Even if you guessed it to be masculine, it would still be ein. No, if you guessed it to be masculine, it would be einen, because here it is accusative. If you guessed it to be neutrum, it has to be ein. I think Problem is neutrum, so it will be ein. Now, why did we do this exercise? You will realize now. Let's see. So actually the topic for today's session is that you should learn to write sentences in past tense. So if you noticed, this is present, this is past, present, past, present, past, right? So you know sein, so ich bin, du bist, es, sie ist. Then you have wir sind, ihr seid, small sc, capital SZ, again sind. Then past of sein is waren. We actually call it as Präteritum, so in German we call this as Präteritum. Don't try to find out what Präteritum is, just think it is one way of past, right? So you can think it of as like am, was, right? So am is present, was is Präteritum. So it will be war, ich war, du warst, ist, and it's also sie war, wir waren, small s, capital Z also are waren, and for ihr wart. And what about haben? So haben, you know, ich habe, du hast, es, sie hat, wir haben, ihr habt, and then small s, capital S, sie haben. But what about hatten? So you have ich hatte, du hattest, es, sie hatte, wir hatten, ihr hattet, and then you have small s, capital SC, again hatten. Let's see why did we do this exercise. Let's look at the answers. So here are the answers. If you don't like my handwriting before, here is the answers in much better handwriting. So you have, if you want to say I'm a web developer, so you will say, if you're describing yourself as a guy, so you'll say ich bin ein Webentwickler. If you are a woman, so you will say ich bin eine Webentwicklerin. If you are saying you are a web developer, so you can say du bist ein Webentwickler. If you are describing a woman, you will say du bist eine Webentwicklerin. And then you do the same exercise for RS, Z, via, yeah, small s, capital S, C. Notice here for RS, there is a separate row. For Z, it's a separate row because, when you use Z, it will be eine Webentwicklerin. For RS, it will be ein Webentwickler. Then the same do the exercise for ich bin, du bist, RSC. The reason we do this exercise is that I want you to just remember this, right? Let's say if you're sleeping and I wake you up and I ask you ich, you should say bin. If I ask you du, you should say bist. Also, you should just not, so I wake you up, you will say ich bin, du bist, sie ist, wir sind, ihr seid, sie sind. And you should also say ich habe, du hast, sie hatte, wir haben, ihr habt, small s, capital S, sie haben. You should just remember this. And also you should remember this one. This conjugation, okay? This you should just remember. It should be, you don't have to, it should be crystal clear to you what is waren for ihr. It should be what. Okay. What to do? Let's see. So if you want to say I offer you a solution, so to offer, the verb is anbieten. To say, sorry, not correct. So spelling it anbieten. Okay. An is separable. So when you use this in a verb without modal verb, you have to conjugate this part, and an goes to the last position. That's what you see over here, right? So bieten for ich is beta, for du it's bietest, sie bietet, wir bieten, ihr bietet, small s, capital S, bieten. So it sounds like a regular verb, right? So then you have the prefix will be at the last position. If you can see it over here, it's here, it's at the last position. Then you have dia. So let's say if there was no you, if you just say I offer a solution, so it will be ich biete Lösung. Lösung is feminine, so eine Lösung, right? If you want to say you will be eine Lösung will be the direct object, it will be accusative, and you will be the indirect object, and it will be dative, right? So you have ich, mich, mir, du, dich, dir, ihn, ihm, sie, ihr, es, ihm. I hope you get the idea, right? So you have this. But then if you want to say I offered you a solution, if you want to go the Präteritum way, for example, that's the way you realized for sein, you have to remember the very conjugations for ich and all the pronouns. And then you also have to, if you go the Präteritum way, you will have to remember the conjugation of waren for all the pronouns. So you will have to remember this. Ich bot, du botest, sie bot, wir boten, ihr botet, small s, capital S, boten. Now, this is too much, right? Then this way you will have to remember the conjugation in present tense and conjugation in past tense for every verb. So you don't have to do it actually, because we will see there is an easy solution for this. So as long as you remember this ones and this ones, and maybe in B1 we will have to use this ones as well. As long as you remember this ones, you are fine. Let's see how you can say this in a simple way. So here's a simple solution. What you have to do is, if you let me zoom in. So if you notice what happening here is that now you have something like angeboten. It sounds like a different variation of anbieten, but you have it for all the sentences, right? You are still saying I offered you a solution, right? In past tense you are saying angeboten. So you have the same thing everywhere at the last position. And then here what you have, ich habe, du hast, sie hat, wir haben, ihr habt, small s, capital S, haben. Now if you go to translate this in English, it will sound very, very, very weird. So okay, it may sound also not that weird. So I will say I have offered you a solution, okay? But in German we don't have, like in English we have like simple tense, simple present tense, simple present continuous tense. Then for past also we have these many variations. In German we don't have all that, right? Advice, don't try to translate this in German. Just understand that when you want to say I offered you a solution, you can just say it like this, okay? You can also say it like this, but this way you don't have to remember this like different conjugations of unbeaten for past tense. you can just remember this variation of unbeaten, angeboten. And then if you already know this conjugation of haben for different pronouns. This is obvious to you, right? All right. So now the question is, let's look at the grammar first. So what happened over here is that at the first position you have the subject. At the last position you have the verb unbeaten. Let's just, we call it Partizip II. Okay, so it is in Partizip II format. What is Partizip II? It's also referred to as perfect. Just you don't have to know that. You just think that it is a different way of saying unbeaten. Okay, the way in English we have you have ask, then you have asked, then you have did ask. Okay, if I ask you in English what are these, maybe you can answer, maybe you cannot answer. That's why just remember that angeboten is a participle zwei format of unbeaten. Okay, and it will be at the last position. Okay, so it is at the last position. What else? The second position is taken by the verb haben, and here it is referred to as Hilfsverb. Okay, helping verb. And this so if you have a dative object and accusative object, the dative object is before accusative and accusative is after dative. This is obvious to you. This rule holds true in almost every situation except, okay, you don't need to know this rule, but just, so when is so dative object will almost always be before accusative object, except when the accusative object happens to be a noun, sorry, a pronoun. Pronoun, I mean it is like mich, dich. If it happens to be one of these, right? So the personal pronoun in accusative, when it happens to be one of these, then it will be here and the dative will go there. But again, you don't need to know this right now. We will learn this in A2. All right, so you understood the grammar. So now the question is, that's it. So whenever I have to say things in past tense, so whenever, if you just know this table, ich habe, du hast, er, sie hat, wir haben, ihr habt, small s, capital S, sie haben, and participle zwei or perfect of a verb, am I now ready to write sentences in past tense? Like, are you completely ready? The answer is almost. So yes, but not yes. So the answer is no. You need to know this table as well. What is this table? So you need to know this one as well. You should remember this one as well. And you already know this. I mean, you know this. Nothing new. So you already know the conjugation table for sign in present tense. Now, so I think you may be having a hint where I'm getting to. So why? So there are two Hilfsverben, two helping verbs when you are writing sentences in past tense, haben and sein. You can use haben by default when you don't know which one to use. Okay, but whenever a movement or change in or change of state is involved, then use sein. What do I mean? For example, gehen, right? So when you want to say I went, so past of participle zwei of gehen is gegangen, right? Gegangen. So you will say ich. Instead of saying ich habe gegangen, it is not correct. You will say ich bin gegangen. Okay, so whenever it is movement or change in state or change of state, you will see this, right? For example, bleiben, to stay, kommen, aufstehen, right? Or einschlafen. So aufstehen, einschlafen, these specify change in state or change of state, right? So whenever you have these, you will have to use sein as the helping verb. Again, if you make a list of such like verbs, situations where you will have to use haben and sein, the haben list will go on and on. This sein list will stop very quickly, right? So just know when to use sein, and then by default you can use haben. Okay, by like when you apply the inversion principle, just know when to use sein. So whenever it is change in state or change of state, or where there is movement involved, use sein as the helping verb to write sentences in past tense. Otherwise you can use haben by default. In the beginning, if you are not like in the exam, they will cut your marks if you use them, when you should use haben. If you use sein, they will cut your marks, and the other way around. In real life, if you are learning, people will just be happy that you are, at least you are using participle zwei of a verb. Okay, but slowly just learn to realize when to use haben, when to use sein. Now also there are few exceptions. What do I mean by exceptions? So whenever you have like swimming, right? So swimming is schwimmen, and participle zwei of schwimmen is or Perfekt auf schwimmen ist geschwommen, right? So when you say I swam, you can say ich habe or ich bin. Both are right, okay? But if you specify you swam to some point, you specify to where you swam, then you will have to say, you will have to use bin, because then it like you're saying you went from one place to another. If you just say you swam, it's, I mean, there is no change in movement, right? I mean it's just a movement, right? You're just swimming. It is as simple as I'm eating, but if you say I swam from one place to another, then you will have to use sein. Also, for example, begegnen is an exception. So begegnen, when you use begegnen, means to encounter, to face someone, or to face a problem. With this you will have to use sein. This is a special exception, so just know that when you use begegnen in past tense, you will have to use sein, even though it does not mean like movement or change in or change of state. Just know that with begegnen in past tense, you will have to use the helping verb sein. So I don't think that it's too difficult to write sentences in past tense. Now let's look at the complete solution, almost complete solution. So let's say if you are saying a sentence where you are using so if you're saying a sentence where you just want to, you're using only one verb. What do I mean by one verb? Sometimes we say sentences with verb, and sometimes we also use Modalverben, right? For example, I read, I want to read, and then I wanted to read. I hope you get the idea, right? So when you use only one verb without Modalverben, how does the sentence structure look like? This you already know. At the last position, you will have verb in Partizip II or Perfekt form at the last position, and then at the second position, you will have the helping verb sein or haben conjugated for the subject, right? And subject will be nominative case. Sometimes while speaking, people don't follow this rule. They just say they will have helping verb here and the subject after this. I know I have told you that when the helping verb, you use helping verb at the first position only when you are asking yes or no kind of question, but sometimes it's fine. When speaking, people break rules. So I think this one, dative object before accusative object, or the other way around, accusative object before dative after dative object. Then what about, so this is a statement or a sentence or a declarative sentence. What about a yes or no kind of question? So it's very obvious. You just interchange the positions of subject and the helping verb. Everything else remains the same, and of course you add a question mark. And what about when you want to ask a W word kind of question? So you say, so you just take this one, you shift it, so you see everything else is over here, and at the first position you have the W word. Okay, so for example, I read, I wanted to read, did I want to read, what did I want to read, okay, what I wanted to read. So I hope you get the idea. These sentences only work, as I said, only for sentences where no modal verb is used. Then what happens when you use modal verb? It's actually even more easier. Why? Let's see. So when you use a modal verb, you don't have to even know the, let's say, just don't try to read the slide, just focus where I am pointing. So when you use modal verb, you don't even need to know the participle y or perfect of a verb. You just can use the verb in infinitive form. Let's see. So you will have the first position, normally at the first position, subject, which will be nominative. In the second position, or you will have the modal verb, right, conjugated for subject, but in Präteritum. We will look at this table. Just so modal verb you will have to conjugate in Präteritum, and then dative before accusative or accusative before dative, and the verb will be in infinitive form, not in participes y. But here I mentioned Präteritum, right? So you will have to know the Präteritum conjugations of Modalverben, right? So there are 6. You just need to know these, and they are not that difficult to remember. I will show you how. So example, ich wollte dir eine Lösung anbieten, right? I wanted to offer you a solution. Then what happens if you want to frame a yes or no kind of question with modal verb? Again, very obvious, just interchange the positions of the modal verb and the subject. That's it. What happens if you want to say this W word kind of question with a modal verb in past tense? It's very obvious. So you take the yes or no kind of question syntax, right? And you shift it. And just at the first position, you have the W word, right? So, musste ich dir eine Lösung anbieten for yes or no kind of question. Wann sollte ich dir eine Lösung anbieten? We did for W kind of question. Now let's focus on this table. This table is not that difficult to remember because First thing you notice is that there is no umlaut, so life becomes easier. There is no umlaut anywhere. Now, if you notice, for ish and for RSZ, they are same, right? Ich wollte, ich musste, ich konnte, ich sollte, ich durfte, ich mochte. RSZ, wollte, musste, konnte. So if you know for ish, you know for RSZ. Then if you know for via, then you also know for z. And is it that difficult to remember? So wollten, mussten, konnten, sollten, durften, mochten. Is that? No, it's not that difficult, right? So you have wollen, you add t, wollten. You have müssen, you remove the umlaut and add t, mussten. You have könnten, so you remove the umlaut from o and it is add t, konnten. Sollen, sollten, right? So how do we do this? So you have wollen, right? In normal case, you add t over here, so it becomes wollten. Sollen, again you add t before n, so it becomes sollten. Möchten, right? So just remove the umlaut, that's it. Mochten, dürfen, so remove the umlaut and add t before en, so dürften, right? It is not that difficult to remember. Können, remove the umlaut, add t, konnten. So what I just said, so for ish and RSZ it is same, for via and zz it is same. Then you just have to remember for du and ia. And it is not that if you know for ish, so wollte, musste, you just have to add st, Wollte, wolltest, musste, musstest, konnte, konntest, sollte, solltest, durfte, durftest, mochte, mochtest, right? And what about t? It's all that simple, right? So you add t, so wolltet, right? I think it should be mustet, if I'm not wrong, okay? Mustet, konntet, solltet, durftet, mochtet. Okay, so I think you are ready now to write sentences in past tense. But before I do that, so you're asking, right? So how do I know what is the participle zwei or perfect of every verb? There are rules. So let's look at the rules first, and then let's look at why you don't need to remember the rules. So regular verbs, what you do is, let's say the verb suchen is a regular verb. You remove this part. You just take this one and you add ge over here and you add t over here. That's how you get participle zwei of regular verbs. Gesucht. Mixed verbs, for example, nennen. No, so you take this one, you modify it, make it like this. How do you modify? Like, here I made e to a, but it will be different for mixed verbs. So what about irregular verbs? So you take, for example, schreiben, right? You add g over here and you make it like this, geschrieben. What about verbs with separable prefix? So you for example, aufmachen, it's to open. So what you do is, between prefix and the verb you write k, auf k, and you just find the participle zwei of the rest of the verb. So machen is gemacht. For example, there's also this verb aufsuchen. I think it means to ask, right? So you write auf, you write g over here, and what is the participle zwei of suchen? You already know. Gesucht or sucht, so it is aufgesucht. Okay, then you have verbs with inseparable prefix. If you want to follow the rule, so for example, bestellen is like, you have, so stellen is a verb, it means to keep. Then you have bestellen, it's inseparable prefix, so you don't add ge, you just add t at the end. Also you have to modify the verb. Now, to follow these rules, first you have to be able to identify whether the verb is regular, mixed, irregular, verbs with separable or verbs inseparable prefix. This one is actually easier to do. But how do you know this one, right? So what I'm trying to say is that don't try to follow the rules. Just learn the participle zwei by heart. So you are already learning whenever you learn a verb, right? Let's say if you learn the verb machen, right? So ich mache, du magst, sie macht, and ihr also macht, and for every other form pronoun it is also machen. Just learn this one as well, gemacht. Whenever you learn a verb, just learn the participle zwei as well, right? Instead of learning Präteritum, then it will be Ich magte, du magtest. Just learn the participes of every verb that is relevant for you. If you learn every day 20 verbs within, let's say, 6 months, so 20 times 30 times 6, so you have 120 times 30, 120 times 30 is 360, 3600 verbs. That is more than enough to say whatever you want to say in German in just 6 months. Okay, and the 20 verbs is not that difficult to learn. You can learn it using Duolingo, or you can just think about your day. You can divide your day into like 24 hours. 8 hours you are sleeping, right? So let's say let we have only 16 hours left. So just from today itself, you divide your day into 30 minutes, right? And see in every 30 minute what kind of situation you are in and what kind of verbs do you need. For example, in the morning, the first 30 minutes, for example, you use your phone, right? So how do you say I use my phone? Ich verwende mein Handy, right? Or ich benutze mein Handy. You scroll through Instagram, right? Scrollen. So you divide your 8 hours gone, 16 hours, you divide this into 20 windows of 30 minutes and just check for those 30 minutes which verbs do you need in German, and this way you will have all the verbs you need for your daily life and also the participes form. Okay, having said that, so here is so you already learned these verbs, 51 verbs in the second session of our sessions, I believe. So here, I have already written the participes or perfect of these verbs. You can go through them. But having said all of that, right? But I told you there is, to talk about past, there are two ways. So one is Präteritum. You can think it of as past continuous, and past perfect is participes or perfect. I told you it's easier to say sentences in participes perfect because then you don't have to remember the different conjugations for each verb in Präteritum, as long as you know the just participes of each verb. But why did I say that? There is a reason behind it. So let's look at that. So Präteritum is usually written. Okay, what do I mean by written? Writing in emails? No, books. Okay, they all maybe also it is used in very formal situations. For example, news anchors use this, newspapers use this, right? Participes or participe perfect, it's usually spoken. Here I also mean like writing emails. Okay, people use participes so everything that is casual or like daily life, you use participes or participe perfect, right? Preteritum, yeah, as I said, used usually in books, right? So, but there are some exceptions. For example, haben sein, you should know, right? So, haben sein. For example, why do I say that? If you want to say I had a solution, so you will say ich hatte eine Lösung. If you want to use participes y. Präteritum. If you want to use, this is part Präteritum. If you want to use participes y to say this sentence, you will have to say ich habe eine Lösung. Now, haben participes y of haben is gehabt. You will have to say it like this. You can just say this one, right? Why is it that difficult, right? Also, you have to remember Modalverben because it makes your life easier, right? Then you don't, if you use Modalverben in your sentences when talking about past tense, you will not have to remember the participes y of the other verb. As long as you know Präteritum of Modalverben, you are fine. Then there are some verbs, for example, denken, finden, wissen, heißen. We use them also in daily life. For example, you say, I found it good, So I found it good. So it's good to know the Präteritum of finden because we use them quite often. So we say, ich fand das gut, Ich dachte, I thought. Ich wusste, So I knew, Just saying, like your life is easy when you use participe perfect, but for some common verbs, know the Präteritum as well, okay? Just Modalverben, heißen, wissen, hinden, denken. Just know the conjugations of these verbs in Präteritum as well. think this is from the last session. I'll just scroll through to get to the next topic. So I think we discussed this. Pronoun man, I think we discussed this, right? So we also use, in English we say, right, one should blah blah, one must blah blah, one reads, so one eats, so whenever you want to say one, like not meaning a number, but it's like one as a pronoun, you can say man, right? So man muss das machen, man muss lesen, man muss trainieren. So whenever you want to say one in German, but not as a number but as a pronoun, use man. Then what about und, oder, aber? So I think it's obvious, many of you have been using Duolingo, so und is and, oder is or, aber is but, right? Whenever you want to say I eat. So these are just simple examples. You can go through them. For example, the sessions are on Monday and Thursday. Die Sessions sind am Montag und Donnerstag, right? Ich esse kein Fleisch, aber ich esse Eier. Modern day vegetarians, right? I don't eat meat. I don't eat meat, but I eat eggs. Notice there is no change in the sentence structure, right? So subject first position, verb second position, object third position. When you use right, so you can use und, oder, aber within a sentence, right? For example, here und Gemüse, right? Deutsch und English. Or you can use these to combine sentences. For example, ich studiere und ich arbeite. So you can use und, oder, aber to combine sentences or to combine nouns, objects or nouns, objects within a sentence, right? I hope you get this. For example, here oder is being used to combine two sentences. So wir können ins Fitnessstudio gehen oder wir gehen ins Schwimmbad, right? All right. What I want to, this is just to, I think either it can motivate you or demotivate you depending upon whether you're doing the homework or not. So I think this is not, I saw this in someone post. So whenever you learn something, you go through 4 phases. Whenever you learn something, in the first phase, you don't even know how bad that skill is. For example, you're German, right? For example, if you have been using Duolingo or any other app, after some time you feel that your German is very good, right? But actually it's very bad depending on how much practice you have done. So you can say, for example, Guten Tag, Guten Morgen, ich bin blah blah, du bist blah blah, ich arbeite als. But actually your German is bad because you think it is good, but it's actually very bad. You have no idea how bad your German is. Then you start taking courses and then you realize actually how bad your German is. For example, when I start asking questions, okay, how do you say this? How do you say that? And I told you that you can say this just after attending 2 sessions of even, right? You don't know how to say it, you realize, okay, man, my German is really bad. Okay, this is the realization phase. This is the ignorance phase. Ignorance, realization. Now you start learning, you start doing homework, and then this is where you reach. You realize, okay, you know how good your German is. Okay, so this is like you appreciate your German. So it is not awesome, but you think that it is good. It has become good. For example, you can describe your day in German. You can say, you can write, if you ask you to describe your day, you can write 50 to 100 sentences describing your day without making any grammatical mistake. Also, you can speak. So you know how good your German is. And if you stay in this phase for, let's say, 3 to 6 months, you eventually reach this stage, right, where you think you are in this stage, you think your German is good, but it has actually become awesome. You don't realize that your German is so awesome, because then you can say things like, what is accusative, when it is dative, right? You can not just describe your day, you can describe, for example, you are watching a movie and you can describe what is happening in the movie, right? Or you can describe what is happening in the meeting. For example, you are in this stage where you can just say, like talk in meetings, just like active participation. You reach this stage and you can actually like give me a report. I ask like, how was your day? You just don't say that, you were like, you woke up, you did that, you did that. You actually tell me that you were in a meeting, and then you tell me what all happened in the meeting, what someone said, so you can describe even more stuff. So you don't know, but your German has become awesome. So just to motivate you, if you keep doing homework, eventually you will reach here. Yeah, see if you can, I think this you can just don't have to find it. I just gave it to you. Just remember the Modalverben. And so quite often people will ask you, was hast du heute gemacht? Maybe it can be your boss, it can be your friend, or whenever. It need not be heute. Like a friend calls you after some time and you say, uh, okay, maybe I don't think you'll talk to your friend in German, but so just think when your boss calls you and you ask you like, what did you do today? So see if you can prepare an answer, so about your work life, right? So what all did you do? And you need to say this, you will need Partizip II and Präteritum. Thank you very much for listening.